Hi fiber friends, welcome back to another Spinning Sara video. As per the community request, I am going to talk to you guys about singles, how you know when to ply versus when not to ply, and it's not terribly hard. It's pretty easy to grasp, so we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. So you want to spin a yarn that you don't want to ply. That is a singles yarn. We spin singles in order to ply, but we also spin singles to remain a singles yarn. One of the questions I had put out on the community tab is, what did you guys want to see next? And one of the answers was, how do I know when to ply versus when to leave it as a singles? And that is a really easy answer, because you kind of have to go into a project knowing whether you're going to make a singles yarn or you're going to make a plied yarn, because you're spinning those singles differently. When you're spinning for a singles yarn, you're putting significantly less twist in that single, okay? So what you're going to want to do is find your slowest spindle if you're a spindle spinner, one that is not you don't want the zippiest thing, you want something that will be nice and give you a slow spin. Okay, if you're like me and you only have spindles that are super zippy, you're going to need to be very aware of how much you're spinning your spindle versus how much you're drafting. You need to be drafting significantly faster than your spindle is spinning, or else you're going to over twist your singles, and then you're going to need to ply those because they're going to be too energized to be able to knit with or crochet with without your fabric biasing. So it's going to lean to the side of the twist that you're doing. If you're a wheel spinner, it's a little bit easier for you because you're going to want to choose the pulley that is the biggest that you have. So I have a Majacraft Rose. This is one of the pulleys for that wheel, and this particular one goes as slow as 4.7. So every time the big wheel goes around on that spinning wheel, my flyer only goes around almost 5 times. So that's pretty slow. My Lendrum goes around 6 times. So that's also pretty slow. So you want to find the slowest or biggest pulley that you have and use that. Make sure you're paying attention to your feet. Don't treadle too fast because you want to keep your twist low. Basically, you only want enough twist so it's not coming apart. So if you were to hand twist a section of fiber, so like you're drafting and then you're literally twisting it by hand, if you were going to keep that as a singles yarn, you would only twist it as much as it takes for a tug test to work. It has to be able to stay together under pressure, and that's all. If you add more twist, you're again going to get into the biasing problem. So you need to know going in whether you're going to ply or not, because when you ply a yarn, it actually takes twist out of your single. So anytime let's talk about it like this. When you spin your singles, generally you're spinning clockwise. Okay, your wheel or your spindle is going in a clockwise circle, and that's adding twist in a clockwise fashion. Okay, when you're plying the opposite direction. Generally that is counterclockwise for most of us. Because you're putting that yarn back through your spindle or back through your wheel and you're turning it the opposite direction, it is actually removing some of your twist. So if you spun a yarn that you intended to leave as a singles yarn, and you spun it just like I had said, where you have very, very low twist, just enough to get it to hold together, and that's all. If you went to go ply that yarn, it would fall to pieces. That would be considered an underplied single for a two ply or a 3-ply yarn. But because you intend to keep it as a singles yarn, it's going to hold together and it's not going to come apart because you've already done your tug test. You've made sure that it's not drifting apart before you wind on or let it onto your wheel. It'll be perfectly fine. So because plying removes some of your initial twist, a singles yarn will fall apart when you try to ply it, 100%. Now I'm going to take you guys to the light box and we're going to look at a singles yarn that I spun quite a while ago to show you the low twist. All right guys, so here in front of you is a singles yarn that I spun eons ago, pre-pandemic. And this particular yarn, I knew I was going into it as a singles, obviously, because I had told you before that you need to go into this with the foreknowledge that you want to spin for a singles yarn. And this yarn is very softly spun. And this is, thankfully, this particular yarn has some spots that have color spirals, so you can actually see how low the twist is. I needed it to be able to show up on camera. I can, with the naked eye, see, like with this strand, that it is a low twist yarn. And if you are very keen-eyed, you can follow the shine of the silk to find the twist. It's pretty low on the twist ratio. I do have this snazzy little thing. It's from Hipstrings, and it is a twist angle measuring device. And basically all it does is it has these little lines and then these little numbers down it, and those lines correspond with your twist angle. You could do the exact same thing if you had a protractor. A protractor is going to give you these exact same angles, and you could use it to determine what your twist angle is. It's not strictly necessary. In fact, it's completely unnecessary to have this, but it's a nice tool if you've never spun a singles yarn before and you really want to get it right and you don't want to screw it up. So basically, when you're spinning for a singles yarn, you want your twist to be between 10 degrees and 20 degrees. So your twist, when you match up your fibers like this, your twist angle should match between 20 and 10. So if it doesn't perfectly match 20 and it doesn't perfectly match 10 and it doesn't match 30 at all, then you have the correct twist angle. I say correct loosely because that's the generally accepted. You want between 10 and 20 degrees of twist angle for a singles yarn. That is traditionally what is accepted, so that is why I'm saying correct. Okay, so let's find a really good spot that has contrast, like this one. This piece has good contrast, and you can follow that black stripe to see. I hope you guys can see. There we go. I think that works better. So if you follow this white stripe, it pretty much almost matches 20 degrees, and it doesn't match 10 degrees. So I would say that it's right in between at 15. And so that's kind of exactly what you're looking for. this yarn was spun on my Majacraft Aura, and if you did pick any piece and did a tug test, it snaps, it does not drift apart, and the twist ratio is very low. Like, these yarns are just slightly off of parallel, and that's really what you're looking for. Okay, when I spun this yarn, like I said, I went into it knowing that it was going to be a singles yarn, and I purposefully spun it as low twist as I could to make it as lofty as I could. It was definitely a challenge, because as we know, plying solves a multitude of sins, right? It hides a multitude of sins. So when you ply your yarn, when you two-ply a yarn, it hides a lot of the imperfections in your yarn and makes it more uniform. Whereas with a singles yarn, what you get is what you get. All right, so I want to show you, since that was a singles yarn that was specifically spun to be a singles yarn, I want to show you a singles that I spun that was not spun as a singles yarn, but rather spun as a yarn I intended to ply. Just so we can compare the differences. All right, so this bobbin is much more tightly twisted. In fact, this blue section right here is really, really perfect because it shows us the twist angle. So if I grab my handy dandy little twist angle measurer thingy here and look at it, the twist is lining up to my eyeballs. I'm looking at all the, like this black line right here, or darker line, and it's pretty much matching that pretty closely. So I think it's spun right at about 40 degrees because I was using these darker bands as a point of reference. So this one was spun at about 15 to 20 degrees, and this one was spun at 40 degrees. If I took this, and this has been finished, so it's not going to be a true representation, but it'll give you kind of an idea. And I forced this to do a ply back. It's going to look something like this if you forced a ply back. It's not going to look like a very nice yarn. In fact, just the teeniest bit of ply twist, like this, makes those fibers go perfectly straight in this ply back. And that's another way that you know that you have enough ply twist, is if your fibers align with each other. So if you can follow your fibers in a straight line right up the ply twist, you have enough ply twist. So this would be enough ply twist for this particular fiber, and that is going to be a horribly splitty yarn to work with. Not only that, but had I actually tried to ply this, it would have fallen apart. It's not the most consistent yarn that I ever spun by any stretch, but I am very pleased with the softness of this. I think this would probably make excellent gloves or a hat. I just need to get off my behind and actually use it for something. Yeah. So your twist angle does matter. However, it is not critical enough for me to say, oh, you must have a twist ratio thingy, for lack of a better term, a control card for your twist angle. It's not necessary to have that. It's not necessary to even make one for yourself. I do, however, recommend that you spin your yarns on your slowest spindle or on your chunkiest, most slowest ratio for your wheel. Take your time, focus on keeping your feet slow if you are at a wheel and your hands fast. And remember, consistency matters with this particular type of yarn. If you are not consistent with a singles yarn, it shows. And if you're going for consistency, then it definitely matters. Because there's nothing to hide any inconsistencies in your yarn. So, you know, this piece right here that's extra thin is always going to be extra thin when stacked up to this piece. There's no hiding the fact that those are two totally different gauges. There's no plying to hide it. This is going to knit up or crochet up at a smaller gauge than this is going to. It is what it is. So, you know, when I use this particular section of this yarn, I'm going to have to know that those stitches are going to be smaller than most of the rest of this yarn. Got it? Okay. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all the interactions with the videos, the likes, the subscribes, the comments, everything like that helps the channel grow and become more visible to more people. So thank you guys so much for interacting with the videos. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. If you have, thank you. If you are interested in more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. And until next time, guys, happy spinning.